Hello and welcome to the second tutorial for Procreate. So this is another winter scene, nighttime, and one of the things that really amazes me in the winter time is how bright it can be outside, even though it's in the middle of the night, and especially if there's some city nearby and the cloud layer is hanging pretty low, because the light bounces up in the clouds and then it bounces back down, and our eyes are pretty amazing when it comes to picking up the light. So it's a totally different palette during the nighttime or evening than in the daytime. And yeah, living in Norway, it gets dark pretty early and bright pretty late. So around Christmas we have about 4 hours of sunlight, and then that's it. And even further north in Norway, the sun doesn't even go above the horizon. But anyway, the image is. This is also sort of just an idea. I don't have any totally plan in my head, which is totally concrete, but I'm sort of working with it, trying to make the composition work and trying to get the palette going. And the image is like the painting becomes the palette pretty quickly. Like it's important to me to find that your image contains the colors, so you can sort of stop picking colors from your color pick from any color, but you can start picking colors from your painting. So everything, when you're found your language for that particular painting. So it's, and here I'm again silhouettes. We're pretty dead on also in this one, like in the Winter Volvo version. So no perspective lines this time either. But this is, you don't really need perspective lines unless you see some sort of perspective. And in this one, even more than in the other the Winter Volvo tutorial, this is even more sort of dead on. We're seeing stuff from further away. We're sort of on a, in my head there's a lake between us and what we see here in the painting. We're probably standing about 200 yards away from this. So it's a bit zoomed in. If this was a photo, you probably had a 70mm lens on your camera, something like that, maybe a 50mm. And again, massaging the whole palette, the canvas, to get the right transitions. This is I want a road to cross here, so it's sort of we're seeing a cross, a road cross here. And I'm also going to introduce another color soon, because it's one thing is the really warm street lights, but then there's also usually some other more white light, more colorless light which comes in. And since this is a very warm palette, everything is pretty orangey. I think it's important to give it some contrast, so not everything, so it doesn't look like there's one filter on everything, but that you that you have something to differentiate. Yeah, I have to excuse my English. It's not the best, but That's all you're gonna get. So again, just keeping on working on the detail, putting in some new stuff into the picture. It's sort of a what is this called in English? Where you tie your boat to in the when there's no ice, like not a dock or a harbor. Sounds too big, but yeah, it's sort of a wooden thing you jump from when you want to dive into the ocean. Brygge in Norwegian, anyway. And I'm thinking that the snow is sort of piled up on each side of the road to also get the silhouettes here on the snow piles. And it's always nice to have, you use the lighting to get nice silhouettes, so you have sort of the bright lumps of snow on the darker background, and then the darker background, and then the darker lumps of snow on the brighter sort of background on each side of the road here. And it's all telling, it's all communicating what kind of surface, what kind of, how much snow it is. And it's not, we're not in the middle of the thickest city here. We're kind of on some farm somewhere. And yeah, getting in some fence. Yeah, I guess this is the closest thing you get to something disappearing into perspective vanishing point here. It's this fence. And also putting in some bushes and trees. It's always good to put into these types of paintings. And also some shadow, right? You have some silhouettes of, there's some spots of light back there, and you can see the trees between us and these light sources. And I also use different brushes that you have on the bushes, for example. You also have the dark spots, which could be leaves or whatever, but you also get the bright spots, which could be patches of snow hanging on to the bushes. And yeah, getting some detail on the house. This is a fairly big house. Like these old big houses where you had the sort of one main house and then a barn usually, and then maybe even a couple of more houses. So this is sort of like a Norwegian ranch farm. Yeah, there's no, I don't have like a particular place I've been which looks like this, but I've been at similar places, so there's always some place in mind where you can get inspiration from. And I put some subtle lights inside because I want it to feel like a nighttime, even though in Norway this could be like 5 o'clock in the evening. It still would be totally dark. But I want a little more of a night feeling, so most of the lights inside are off. And yeah, getting some pipes. It's not called pipes. Yeah, again, my poor English is yeah, skorstein. Anyway, where your fireplace smoke needs to get out from the house. And again, putting in the detail, putting in the snow. The snow will hit a lot of vertical surfaces on the house, and putting in the small details like steps on the house, or it always helps. It helps to give scale to the picture, and it's sort of a monochrome painting usually when you have these winter landscapes, and it's always sort of very easy to define what is snow and what is not snow. So it's fun to work with. I really like the winter time. It's very it looks good, I think, the winter time, as long as there is snow, of course. And also how the one thing I really like, and I think it only happens, there needs to be a city. There needs to be some sort of light source on the ground that lights up the low cloud layer, like you see here, and which gives the houses, even though there's snow on the roof, you have sort of a slightly darker silhouetted house on the, not the bright sky, but you still see the silhouettes of the houses, and I think that's really cool when you get this really warm palette. Yeah, I had to put in a car. I'm not gonna do that in every painting though, but yeah, this needed something that made this painting a bit more interesting than a barn in the nighttime, or a farm in the nighttime. So again, maybe it's the same car as the other painting, and of course, if you don't have good enough tires, you're gonna end up off-road, right? Yeah. So this has been a little trip out on the ice. And this will also be, like, the light source in the car will be a lot colder than the really warm street lights. Also to give some sort of dynamic range in the color space of this painting. And putting in some detail here. I want to keep it so the light inside the car is still pretty soft, but some detail will show through, just to define that there's some sort of interior in this car. And yeah, working on the details. And I keep this car on a separate layer. Pretty much everything else is on one layer, like everything with the farm and the snow and the trees and everything is on one layer. The sky color is on the background color layer, which is the bottom layer always in Procreate. And then I put one layer between the bottom color layer and the farm and everything to define the clouds a little, so there's something going on, not just one color on the sky. And then what I paint now with the car and the cracks and the tire tracks and everything, I also put that. Usually when I paint something new, a new element into the painting, before I'm sure exactly where it's going to be, how big it's going to be, the scale, the perspective, everything, I usually put it on a separate layer until I'm happy with it, until I'm sure that it's going to stay, and then I might merge it down, because I like working in as few layers as possible. I also found the sort of my pain threshold for the maximum amount of layers in Procreate is 4. With 4 layers I can do most things, and I can also have one layer which is for perspective lines and reference images if I need that. But you kind of need room to merge down and to duplicate, and so 4 is sort of the the minimum amount of layers. But again, what you get is sort of the maximum amount of resolution, so you get 4096 pixels by 3072, so that's the limit for 4 layers. So I usually work with that, and then I might crop it later, but yeah, 4 layers is minimum. 5 is probably a little better, especially if you're gonna make patterns, for example tiles or brick or stuff like that, where you need to duplicate, move and merge down, duplicate, move and merge down until you have a big nice grid of tiles or bricks or whatever, and then push into perspective and then do that maybe several times. Then you need some space, you need some, yeah, even 4 might be at least 1 layer too little. Again, putting on some glow here, and also I want the backlight to show, so the engine is still on this car. It's always some nice detail. Here I put in, I put the glow on 1 layer, also for the street lights. I think it's on the same layer. And I want some sort of lost individual to stand here, being a bit, yeah, in shock probably, because he just ran off the road, and yeah, talking in his mobile phone. Probably a bit drunk, maybe. Don't drink and drive. And yeah, just working on the silhouette. And here again, using the transformation tool or the distort tool to get the proportions right, get the perspective right on him. And yeah, some detail. He's probably on his way to a party, wearing a shirt and tie. But I don't think he'll get there tonight. And yeah, closing in on the end of this painting. A little frost smoke, a little frost steam coming out of his mouth there. And I duplicated one of the city light, and I want to give this painting a few more street lights, just to give a illusion that it's a few more people living around there. Trying to find the right spot for this one. And I want it to be behind some of the vegetation, so I kind of just erase into the light, take away what's in front of it, giving it the right distance. And I'm gonna squeeze it a bit, because I want it to be a bit more cinematic format again, and I'm squeezing it a little down, and I think it can take it. It's not gonna look too fat, this one guy. It's gonna be okay. And what I'm doing now is I want to make it darker in the corners, vignette. I'm not totally sure what it's called in English again, but it's what naturally occurs when you take a photography. It gets darker toward the corners, and but what you also can clearly see on this video is the banding issues, especially in the you see it here, and especially on the sky. And working with the 8-bit picture and this sort of palette, banding is an issue. So I toned it down and I saved a new one, so this is not that dark as you saw me, as the version you saw me save. I just put down the resolution a little, or the opacity a little on this vignette, just to keep the banding issues at a minimum. And I put some sharpening here in the Snapseed, and there you go. That's it. That's it for this one. Thank you for watching.